9:16 here on the morning show with Jeff and Will. It's AM 1700 WRCR Haverstraw, WRCR.com. We welcome right now the editor of RCBizJournal.com, Tina Trasser, who joins us at this time every Monday morning. Good morning, Tina. How are you?
Good morning, Jeff. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well, thank you. I wanted to get into the rabies story that you posted there on RCBizJournal.com.
I'm going there because this is an important issue for this county.
All right, well, wait a minute. Before you get into that article, I have a little quibble with you on the article itself.
A little correction to make.
We're focused on facts here. We got to clarify something first before we get into this majorly, thoroughly investigated piece that you have here. You mentioned that on his weekly radio show last Thursday, on November 9th, Howard Phillips, the chairman of Rock and Green, says blah, 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 blah. I have to point out, A, it's not his show.
It's his segment.
It's a segment on the morning show with Jeff and Will. And B, you didn't mention that or that it was on WRCR radio. And I'm very, very bitter about that.
Oh, my God. I am awful. I will fix that.
Please do.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
I'll fix that. No problem.
Now let's hear about the rest of the article.
The true. Now we'll get to the little bit.
I'll send that down to the repair department immediately. But sorry about that. Honestly, seriously, but in all honesty, this is a very serious story, a very serious issue, and it raises, it really should stimulate some very serious conversation and dialogue in this county, in this community, particularly among our elected officials. The rabies incident at the Summit School last week really shines a spotlight on the oversight and accountability at RG Cares, which is Rockland Green's animal shelter, the former Hightower animal shelter. Let me get into some of the weeds here and try to explain why what happened is so, in fact, alarming. It was this innocent gesture by Four Legs Good, which is the consultant that replaced Hightower for a short-term contract through the end of December to run the shelter, while at the same time they're still running their own cat rescue operation. Mm-hmm. And they sent a tiny injured kitten. The kitten had a gash on its side to a residential school, the Summit School, for emotionally and behaviorally challenged children to be fostered. This, in and of itself, is so problematic because kittens, unvaccinated feral kittens, the kittens can't be vaccinated until they are 12 weeks old. This kitten was about a month old. It had an obvious wound. The cat rescue is justifying its action by saying that it was, given the green light to be fostered by a veterinarian. That might be the case if it had gone to what's known as a medical foster, meaning one individual who might have been able to keep a watch on the kitten and take care of it. But that is a different exercise than putting a young, injured, unvaccinated kitten into a school that has a population with its student and faculty of somewhere between 150 and 200 people who are going to handle this young animal. And as we learned last week, this turned into essentially a disaster, because while in the care of these children and this school and the faculty, the kitten grew very ill, was taken to veg in Nyack, the veterinarian, and was ultimately euthanized and found to have rabies. Now, bigger picture, bigger problem is that for years we've had a problem with feral cats and a proliferation of kittens in this county, and for that I hang that on to a total indifference really among elected officials to look at this problem from a legislative point of view, which other communities do, to look at this as a holistic problem that required adequate funding. There are communities all around the nation that understand that a runaway feral kitten population is an economic issue, it's a quality of life issue, it's a health issue. We here in this county have not dealt with this issue. But that aside, okay, this kitten came through Rockland Cares, which is Rockland Green's shelter, and it raises the issue that the protocol for a kitten like this is either absolutely missing or really needs to be looked at and reconstituted, because it's just on the face of it. This made absolutely no sense at all. A kitten like this would have needed round the clock bottle feeding, close attention. It's hard to even understand and how this could be. Now, I don't know that the school administration, which has been running this pet program for quite a successful, pet program to help the students, could have understood the implications of taking in such a young kitten. But what we learned, certainly through our reporting last week, was that the school had never taken in such a young animal before, and probably with good reason. Add to that the fact that the kitten came, as I said, through the shelter, Rockland Cares, Rockland Green's shelter, and at the shelter we have confirmed reporting that there's been a new outbreak of the panleukopenia or the distemper virus, and that there's at least 15 cats with ringworm. So again, this is a cat that was not protected enough to be put into a school setting. I think really what this now, from what as we know, last week students and faculty, and then all of those exposed at the shelter, were getting their rabies injections, and that's very painful, and it's 4 courses of 3 injections each, and not to mention the fact that rabies injections are extremely expensive, and somebody, whether the county or the state, is footing the bill. But I want to just say, I think more importantly here, is that I think all in all, this really raises the question as to whether, government should have stepped in and decide to put itself in charge of animal management in the first place. There are many who believe that, government really doesn't have a place in this realm. And what we have seen in the last, year or so, since this effort has started with Rockland Green, is that despite the fact that the taxpayers have been taxed been levied $1.4 million, we have seen chaos, change of regimen, an ousting of Hightower, putting in a different administration, a complete lack of continuity. I would say a complete lack of professionalism, that should be applied when you're running a complex shelter. Sheltering is probably one of the toughest businesses that you can think of, and I think that while Rockland Green or the public officials here believe that they were the ones to come in and rescue the problem, I think what we have seen are a continuation of problems. You're talking about, sadly, a public authority that is filled with patronage jobs, and the person who's been put in charge of the shelter, and that is not 4 legs good. The person who's been put in charge of the shelter is a Rockland Green employee who has absolutely zero background in animal shelter management. So, from this chaos and from all of the instability and the change of regiments and putting, getting rid of an entire staff that was familiar with animals and putting in a new staff that has that's overburdened because they've been running, on a shoestring budget, a cat rescue operation. I mean, what we have is I would say just an absolutely colossal failure in smooth management. I mean, Rockland Green its history is in solid waste. It was not in animal management. And I think that this incident, I think, is emblematic of it's seemingly one small incident or one bad mistake that could have been much worse, God forbid. But I think what it speaks to is that what we've got going on here in this county is not the right solution for the care of stray and homeless animals. It's really quite sad. I think that Rockland Green and Four Legs Good, are lucky that that everybody's been vaccinated or getting vaccinated now, because it takes I think up to 2 weeks for rabies to incubate in human nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
But this is costly. And for the children, and I interviewed some of the children. This is traumatic. They have experienced the death of a kitten. They have to go through a rabies series, and it's just very sad. And I think that we don't have. I think the bottom line here is that right now we do not have a steady hand on the wheel, and it's very concerning. And as we look to 2024, we're looking at, I believe they're planning to raise even more. We're in the process of looking at that, even more taxes, I think about $1.6 million. Plus, that doesn't even include what is likely to be something up near $20 million of bonding to build the warehouse shelter in the village of West Haverstraw. So this is I would say this is very much a weak link in our governance here in the county that otherwise runs relatively smoothly, and that we can think about maybe some of the solutions the next time we all speak. But right now, I think we do have a crisis, and it needs attention.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was certainly a lot there, but like Jeff was saying before, I mean, your reporting is quite thorough on the situation, and I urge anyone listening right now to visit rcbizjournal.com, of course, to read up on that as well, in addition to listening to this segment, which we do appreciate. But of course, I suppose a question I could pose at you is, I don't necessarily see Rockland Green. Obviously, you and several other people have some disagreements and have voiced such in Rockland Green's takeover of the shelter, and I don't see them giving that up anytime soon. But do you think the procedure or the steps to clearing cats in this certain type of way, obviously not putting them in to a situation like that young, and testing them much better, and maybe getting 2 or 3 opinions from different veterinarians, could be implemented in the future to prevent situations like this, maybe changing up the procedure to avoid this in the future?
Well, let me just say that there is there would never be a reason for a second opinion in a situation like this. You would never want to put a neonatal, as they're called, kitten, into a school that has not been vaccinated against rabies, period. Like, that is the light bulb that should have gone on, last week. So I can't imagine that something like this would ever happen again. I'm pretty sure the Summit School, has been chastened over this incident. But that said, the answer to your question, Will, I think is this: it's time to have professionalism around the shelter. It had some of that briefly. It was undermined. A shelter is a professional operation. It needs to have professional people running it, not somebody from Rockland Green because they happen to be in Rockland Green, not a local rescue because they've had some shelter experience. At the top level, what's completely missing is professionalism, and we are going to keep seeing the fallout of that until something's done about it. That's my prediction for the county.
Well, as grim as that is, we can only hope the best at the end of the day for the animals and people at the end of the day who do interact with them. them, but that's what everybody wants. It's just a confusing and chaotic mess as to how we get there, apparently, and we will continue reporting on that and talking to you about it as we move into the future. Tina, thank you so much for your in-depth reporting on the situation. We do appreciate it, and we appreciate that you call us each and every week to talk about all things Rockland business, and we urge the folks out there to check out the Rockland County Business Journal either on Facebook, on Twitter, or like I said before, their website is rcbizjournal.com. Again, Tina Traster, thank you so much. Have a great week, and we will talk to you next week.
Okay, have a great week, everybody.